And then
Yeah,
everybody, we're going to start here in about 5 minutes, waiting for a few more people to attendees to log in. So just hang tight. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I'd like to thank our guest, Community Programs Director Dave Flesher, and Specialist Heath Price from USDA Rural Development. They'll be talking today about primarily their community facilities and water and environmental programs, water, wastewater programs like that, but they might briefly touch on some of the other programs, the many programs that USDA Rural Development has. So with that, we'll begin. You can hold questions until the end, or you can, yeah, we'll probably just do that. Hang on to your questions till the end of the presentation, and then Dave and Heath can answer them at the end. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heath.
Yeah, great. Thanks for tuning in today.
You can push the orange arrow to make it that finger there so you can see.
Okay, see better?
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, thank you for inviting us to come talk about our community programs. Just to start off, our main bread and butter programs, our infrastructure programs, we call them the water and environmental programs, dealing with water and sewer. The first, first of all, those funds can be used for construction, design, pre-design, anything dealing with the project, that the community or nonprofit would like to do. Typically our funds can be used for those items. As you can see, second of all, the people that are eligible would be the public bodies, nonprofits, so HOAs, smaller water districts, and then of course Indian tribes. We don't deal with the developers though. For our infrastructure program, the population where the infrastructure is located needs to be under. There have been times, like the city of Nampa, which would be way bigger, but if there's a small district or HOA that's outside of Nampa but is still hooked into Nampa, but that they have a separate system, we can also help with just their portions of that system, as long as it's not helping out the city of Nampa, which would be over that population. With these projects, we like to see that community support there. Of course, with a bond, you're going to show that, a revenue bond is going to show that community support. If we're dealing with an HOA or nonprofit, we like to see that they've had public meetings and that the citizens are made aware of the project that they're about to do. And then, of course, our term, we can go up to 40 years. Our interest rate varies, each quarter it's different, but it's a fixed interest rate for the term of the loan.
And Heath, just a couple of clarifications on the population. We base that on the last decennial census, and so if they were, that's the criteria we use. On the legal authority to incur debt, a couple of years ago we did change our policy, so if a community does do a judicial confirmation, we will recognize that as well. We do encourage that they do the elections, and with a revenue bond, you only need that simple majority, so you only need 50% plus one. But if a community does decide to go the judicial confirmation route, that is valid. And on those interest rates, we can do shorter terms if it's a loan only, but if we've got grant funds involved, we have to do the maximum terms, which would be 40 years if it was a revenue bond or a promissory note to a homeowners association. But if it was a GO bond or a local improvement district, the state law limits that to 30 years, so that would be fine. Those would be 30. And those interest rates are currently, our poverty rate is at 1.75. It's going to be going down July 1, and that 1.75 is a historic low. In July, it goes down to 1 5/8. And the market rate is at currently 2 7/8, and it will be going down to 2 3/4. And so it's sort of uncharted territory for us on those interest rates.
Yeah, so everybody rush in and do a deal right now.
Loan only.
Yeah, so then we get to the big question, is there grant? You notice that picture, that trailer there has got rebar on it. So it's actually one of our projects that we did here in western Idaho. That truck was pulling in and got a little close to the sewer lagoon, and they needed a little help getting out out there. So imagine that that trailer's a little bent there. But like I said, it depends, and like Dave was saying, a lot of what we base our money off of is the census, and so part of whether they qualify for grant is median household income, and so looking at a community or residents in that area, that will determine whether they qualify for a grant or not. The other thing that we look at is similar systems. So obviously, a community that is treating their wastewater with a mechanical treatment plant is going to have a lot more O&M costs than a small city with lagoons or even a smaller HOA with a glorified septic tank. And then the third thing is are the grant funds available? Each year, as I'm sure everyone's hearing with all the different funding agencies, is everybody's getting cut. We're seeing more cuts in our grant funding. So, years ago it was there were larger amounts of grant. Now we're looking at about 80% loan to 20% grant, and what we're allocated as a state. So.
And keep in mind, we don't have to do every deal at that level, but overall from the state, that's about the the percentage or proportion we're dealing with. And so, when engineers come in with a project that need a 50% grant, it's like, sweet, get us a loan only or a real low percent, so that overall we can still fund that. And of course, we partner on the vast majority of these projects with Department of Commerce and the Block Grant Program, and also with the SRF program through DEQ. And then on a few limited projects with the Army Corps Engineers with the Section 595 program. So we really do try to leverage those dollars. And we also are unique in that, most agencies, Commerce and DEQ and the Corps, they'll get a specific allocation. That's what the state gets. There's no more. In our case, we can steal money from other states. And we can make reserve requests, and if we've got a competitive project with leveraged funds, funding partners, and it scores well, usually over time, we've averaged about an extra 30–40% of our allocation every year. Last year was a record year where we actually got over 400% of grant funds and about pushing over 200% of loan funds. And but again, was a perfect storm last year, and this year we spent some time kind of, if you will, kind of controlling expectations a little bit. That no, we're not going to do another $55 million in assistance this year like we did last year in this program. Our normal is about 25 to $30 million. So.
55 million.
Yeah, we were a little busy last year. But you guys were partners in a majority of them.
Yeah, so our next program is our community facility program, and that's dealing with anything from hospital, critical access hospitals, to fire stations, to schools, anything built above ground, and those costs, the eligible costs are similar to what we talked about in the water environmental program. Anything from legal costs to admin costs to pre-design and then down to construction. the difference with this program is it bumps up to 20. The eligibility area is 20,000. Now, keep in mind with you know, as I was saying with the water environmental program, if there's a nonprofit that is located outside of one of these bigger cities, Boise or Nampa, we can also look at the eligibility of that. You know, if they're out in the county, those can also be eligible. But we just, you know, request that you give us a call and we can walk you through that process and see if that plot of ground where they're wanting to build that building is eligible. This is the same. You know, they got to have legal authority to incur debt. You know, as the state has just changed legislation on hospitals and airports, they can go out to do a revenue bond without having to go out to vote to the public. And then, you know, once again, term is 40 years. Interest rate has been anywhere from 3 1/8 to 4 1/2. But as Dave said, our historic rates, actually need to update this slide, but yeah, our historic rates will decrease to 2.75 next month. So it's crazy.
And also on the term on that, normally we're looking at a max of 30 years on these, although legally we can go to 40. We don't want to do the 40, especially on a community facility loan, because if that project gets into trouble down the road, if we have that extra 10 years, sometimes that gives us a little more flexibility on a servicing issue. Whereas if we've done the loan for the maximum term, it somewhat ties our hand.
And then this program, speaking of grant, it's very minimal. Get about $100,000 for the whole state. So that typically goes to our more critical projects. You know, a low-income community that needs a fire station or a fire truck, or, you know, something to that effect. Those are who's getting the grant money. Not to say that a community couldn't apply for grant money, but when we rank them, and the priority typically goes to you know, health and safety, that type of deal.
And this year we actually did get a little bit more funds, which was a surprise, and so we're able to do, you know, but it's still only about a couple $100,000. So when you spread that over the whole state, it doesn't go very far. Then we also have a small set aside for communities that have very high unemployment rates that we can. Back when the state's economy was booming, we went about 4 or 5 years and had no eligible communities, and we get an updated list every year from Department of Labor, and we've got a fair number of communities that have unemployment rates that are over the threshold on that program is 19.5%, and there are some that are still higher than that. So we just access, you know, allows us to give them a little, you know, come up with a little more money.
Yeah, so after going over those first couple of slides, we kind of look at our programs as kind of like a puzzle, trying to go into a community, you know, similar to what Block Grant does. We go into a community and try to put those pieces together for, you know, help the community out with whatever their needs are. So we'd like to just kind of go through some of those projects that we've done, water and sewer, of course, and just to see the importance of these critical infrastructure. If you look down there at the bottom of that wastewater treatment plant, you see the treatment plant is kind of green, has algae in it. It's kind of that green color. And then you look down there in the Payette River, it's a little darker. But if you look right there in the middle of the, right past the trees there, you see similar colors to what's coming out of the treatment plant.
That's the outflow.
That's the outflow. So as you're thinking about these communities, I mean, a lot of times we just flush the toilet and never think about it again, but all that's got to go somewhere, and we've got to make sure that we're taking care of it. Then if you look even smaller down there, right in that green section of the river, we've got a close-up of that picture, and those are actually rafters going through that small section. And you didn't believe me? Well, here's the picture. You can tell. See for yourself. So, I mean, you just see that the criticalness of our programs and along with our funding partners with the Department of Commerce to get these projects done. And this is what it should look like. This was a project over in eastern Idaho. Operator out of Robert's showing us the what the wastewater should look like after it's been treated and coming out of a good working plant. Next, picture of the critical access hospital. I mean, you look up there at that before picture, and I guess that'd be kind of hard for me in an emergency to pull up there with my family and one of my kids that's hurt and needing an emergency room, and you pull up there, and it you look at that after picture, and it really really is a little more inviting. Where's it? A little more. It's in Weiser.
Oh.
And the top one is not an onion shed. That is the
same building.
Hospital.
Oh. Wow.
So yeah, so that's been another one that we've been trying to promote more, especially now that critical access hospitals can do a revenue bond without having to go to get a public vote, without having to do a geo bond in order to do.
The other thing to keep in mind is up until about 3 to 4 years ago, our annual allocation of funds in the community facility program was about $3 million in loan, 3 to 4 million. The last 3 years, it's been $20 million. And so the reason for that, it's not any more tax dollars, it's that that program is now currently subsidy neutral, which means basically the interest off the loans is covering the cost of the loan program. It doesn't include staff costs, but as far as just the loan costs, it's got very low. We have very low delinquencies and so on nationwide, and so that's why we had a 7% increase in allocations nationwide, and so we are able to do a lot bigger projects. Last year we funded we put in $22 million of a $38 million project over in Gooding to refinance that North Canyon Medical Center into a $10 million medical office building addition. And 5 years ago, that would have been, we'd have never been able to come up with that amount of money, direct loan money. So
another thing that we've been getting involved in a little bit more is with irrigation districts. This is a picture of the Minidoka Irrigation District Dam there over by Burley, and the project was about what, 29 million. We're able to partner up with the Bureau of Rec and those districts over there passed a bond. Each one of those panels here, let me go to the next page. Well, I guess kind of about the same, but each one of these gates there used to be manually operated, so the operator used to have to go out and manually lift those up, to let more water go.
they were actual boards.
Oh my gosh.
It's like it was literally, it was a quarter-mile spillway, and that, so 1,300 feet of boards that are 8 feet tall, manually removed if they had to adjust them.
Wow.
And they had to lower, if you go to Pocatello in the winter, as you went down through Massacre Rocks in the winter always before they drew down Lake Walcott, which is behind this. This winter, they never drew it down, and it's because before the old spillway was so in such poor condition, it needed, the ice moved it originally, and so that's why they dropped it. And so the ice isn't going to move that. And so they're able to maintain that level pool year round. So
yeah, so we were able to help them out with that project. You think about the Burley area and how much farming and all takes place in that whole area, and all the farmers that depend on on that irrigation water.
There's a lot of concrete though in that thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So just some of the interesting facts. Originally built in 1903 through the Reclamation Act. Back then there were 2,000 farmers, and I've got 22. I think I need to update that slide as well. I think, like David said, it was closer to 29 million to make all the improvements.
And we had about, I don't know, it was 8 or 9 million we put into it. So
Yeah.
Which was the portions of the Burley Irrigation District and the Minidoka Irrigation District put into it. So.
And the last little slide there, kind of our state director's claim to fame. His grandparents actually helped construct that original dam. His grandmother was a cook. She would go out and cook for the contract, the construction workers, cook a meal for them while they're out there working, and his grandpa helped build that. But then, other things we've done, things like, I think you guys were a partner on the cost of schools that I think Department of Commerce had some money, EDA money was in there, I know that. But yeah, kitchen equipment, we were able to piggyback on that school out there. That KYF2 is the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Foods program that we have, and we were able to come in and help, or give them, that was all grant there, that we were able to help them get their kitchen equipment updated. So they were able to feed the students, but also I've heard that they, it's kind of open to the public, that people are able to come and get fresh meals there. Yeah, next would be public charter schools and public schools. We've done a couple up north, a few, 4 or 5 over in eastern Idaho. Mm-hmm. And construction. Yeah, construction. The one up here, where is that?
That's the Sandpoint Charter School. That's our high school.
I know that we helped remodel the high school and then built a new.
Yeah, they actually have its K through 12. That picture is the high school. That was new construction, and then the elementary and middle school was a purchase and a building remodel that we did. And this one also we partnered with a bank through our guaranteed program on. And, very successful.
Fire station. This was the one out in Wilder. I don't know if you've been out. Any of you have driven out in that area lately in the past couple of years. But going on with Wilder, there's a picture kind of there. I think it was on, I don't know if it was in Time magazine or one of those magazines back there, but you go on their website and you can pull this up. You can see behind their fire truck there, that was the fire station before the one that we built. But then to the right there, where those trucks are parked, there used to be a building there, which was their older fire station. And I guess the fire truck there that they've got shown, because of the heat of, okay, so their fire station starts on fire in the middle of the night, and because of the heat, cause an electrical malfunction in that fire truck, which starts the fire truck and it rolls out into the street. So the fire station burns to the ground. The next day they come out and see the fire station's burned to the ground and the fire truck is out in the middle of the street. So it escaped the fire, and they still have that fire truck out there in Wilder. I don't know if they still use it to fight fires with, but I know that they still have it. It still works. So it's kind of cool. Cool history. Oh, shoot. There we go. Another fire station over in Smiley Creek, by Redfish Lake there. This was a cabin, just a cabin that someone was selling, and the fire district needed a fire station. So they were able to convert the house into, training and operations building, and then they did a remodel on that garage there so they could fit fire station, and then we were able to give them some grant to purchase the fire truck. so we can do buildings and or equipment there. And then the tribes, tribal. We said tribes are eligible for our funding as well. I don't know how many of you know the history of the Shopai admin building. They had one down there that had a flat roof and had a basement, and down in that area the subwater is way high, and so every year they had flooding in the basement, and the roof was flat, so if there was anything going on with the roof, it was leaking and had issues. So they had a lot of problems because due to the nature of the water being in there, they of course had mold problems, and that the mold actually started their AC system. The mold got an AC system and it blew around, so they condemned that building, and so they came to us looking for some money. The other thing that the tribes had down there, if you've been down to the Duck Valley, all the all their admin building, their finance, everything was spread out over the whole reservation down there. And with this loan and grant that we were able to give them, they built 2 buildings that were right there in place of their old building. They demolished their old building but built these 2 new buildings, and with the space and size of these 2 new buildings, they're able to accommodate for all of their programs. So it became a one-stop shop, so that people wanting to go in for whatever they're looking for can go and not have to travel all over town to find where they're supposed to be. So, and it's energy efficient and all those good things too. So, a little success story. But there we go, and put all the pieces together, and you got a community. It works. It works every time. Let's see next here. So really, our keys to success, I guess, with these programs is, 1, building relationships. For a federal program, as you look around, most of the federal programs have one, a loan specialist or whatever you want to call it up in the Seattle area. Or, I know in the past EDA's had someone here in Boise. Do they still have someone that does funding out of Boise, or do you have to go? I think it's Seattle still.
Yeah, Seattle still. Yeah.
So that's kind of what we take pride in, is rural development, talking rural. I mean, we have area specialists in each area, and don't be afraid to call them up and ask them to come out and explain the programs and sit down with you, go through our application process. I've filled out a few applications myself and helped with those programs. And the other relationship is, of course, our funding partners, our councils of government, and engineers and architects and lenders that we work with our program. So that, in all reality, is what we're striving for, is to make sure that our relationships with everyone is good. Second thing is education and communication. A lot of these communities that we work with, the big thing for them to do anything is to successfully pass a bond. And so don't be afraid, if you've got something in your communities, our area specialists are more than happy to come out and attend a public meeting, city council meeting, and go over our requirements. Also, like we said, we like to see the community have buy-in. So if you're going to be passing a bond or something in the future, we'd like to be there and help, with that education process on the bond and projects, what's happened in the past and what's been successful, and also making sure that the communities that we're, or the citizens also are educated on what the project is, so they can make an informed vote. Then again, looking at HOAs, we need to make sure that there is some reliable income. We don't want an HOA coming in saying, we need this done, but the users are all on fixed income and Social Security and can't afford to actually do that project. The next thing would be health and safety in the communities. Like that project I showed you at the beginning, that that sewage that was going untreated or, you know, barely treated before it's put into our rivers and streams. I mean, those are huge things, so we need to make sure our communities are aware of that. You know, so many times, just thinking about cost as well, so many times people are complaining, well, our water and sewer rates are going up, you know, but you think about, you look at the cost of living and everything out there, all those things are going up too. So you think about those most basic needs in a community, to have water and to have sewer, are huge. So it all comes in the education process, and then the taxpayer money. I mean, we've got to make sure that our users, you know, they're happy with the project and that there aren't any surprises. How are we on time? We're good. All right.
Yeah.
We're going good. The next thing, how are we improving our community programs? You know, kind of what's next, and where this is a PDF, I won't be able to go and show you online this, but right here, this is our website. You're welcome to go on there, but also what we're doing here with our website is we've created a way to go online, and the whole application process is electronic now. So, and that's only for our water and sewer programs right now. Our community programs will be coming on here shortly, but for right now, it's just our water and environmental programs. And communities in the past, we've had to mail out, you know, paperwork and all this government paperwork that they have to fill out and sign and then mail back to us. And now we're trying to make things more efficient. So with this already apply, you can actually go on and sign, you know, get signed up and get a level 2 authorization, so that our application can be submitted right from wherever you get Wi-Fi access on your computer. And yeah, I mean, a couple of those points there. Everything has gone electronic from our state. From our state office, we're able to look at files throughout the state in our different area offices. Before, we'd have to wait for them to send our file, and then we would read it and see where the issues are. But Dave and I now can go on our shared drive and see any project at any time and see what the status is. So if one of our specialists is out of town or, you know, not around, people are able to call us at the state office, and we can tell them right where they're at on their projects and help answer their questions. And then it goes along with that last bullet point that we're taking more of a team approach to make sure that our customer service is right there, ready to go. Here's just some numbers on our water and sewer side investments in the last, 2009, 2015. So last 6 years there, if you look, 84 million, sorry, let's go up to the top here, if I can read that. Yeah, so what we've done is 186 million that we've invested into infrastructure, and 84 million, sorry, is the leveraged amount. So add those two together, and that's a lot of money going into the state of Idaho for water and sewer. Yeah, a couple of other interesting there.
On that loan and grant ratio, right there, we're at about 71% loan, 29% grant. And as he's mentioned, it is going a little less grant and more loan at this point, but we've tried to be consistent throughout over time.
And so at the top there, almost 150,000 residents that's affected, and that's the key. You know, I mean, you think about Boise, and that's nothing. Thinking about Boise, but you think about all these small communities, 10,000 and under. Add all those together, and that's a pretty broad range of communities that we've been able to bring money into to help out. And the most important number right down there at the bottom is 0 delinquency rate. So yeah, right as of now, knock on wood, we don't have anyone that's delinquent. And yeah, there's our website. If you have any other questions, feel free on that website. It's got all of our contact information. And yeah, we can open it up for questions if we have any.
I have a question.
Okay.
One of our rural communities just called and asked if there was any support for installing charging stations for electric cars. I don't know if that's something that any of your grants or programs do.
Yeah.
I haven't had that
seen
question
yeah.
before, but you know, that's something we could look at. I don't on the yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I mean, one thing to think about. I mean, we can see that, you know, kind of the, I guess, the economy or the world's kind of going to that electric charging station. But one of the requirements for our funding is that it's a necessary, or it's a
essential community
facility. That's the word I was looking for. And so at this point, you know, is it a want? Maybe there's someone that wants it, but is it essential for that community right now? I mean, how many cars are in Wilder that are electric?
They were hoping it would draw more people to their area to drive through and use their services, more of an attraction thing.
Well, and you have seen, I mean, I know, like, just over by our state office, there's one of the hotels has some charging stations.
Right.
Yeah, oh, by Edwards?
Yeah.
By Tesla, yeah.
And so, to me, I mean, it definitely, you could see where it could be a draw.
Right.
For a, you know, a certain clientele. So.
Right.
Now, if it's a business, you know, we do have business programs that could get doing, you know, guaranteed loan for that. I don't know who you were talking to, if it was actually a city or if it was a business city. And so the other thing you have to think about with the city is the whole bonding issue. I mean, you'd have to convince the citizens, and they would have to vote, you know, in order to incur debt on that type of project.
Gotcha.
So if the citizens are on board for that, yeah, it's something that could.
Another project we did last year that was the first one we had done actually was we did a city passed a bond over in eastern Idaho where electric rates are pretty high, and a couple of years ago propane rates were really high, and so they actually did a bond and we did a community facility loan to allow, it was Intermountain Gas, extended natural gas into that community. And so they have to charge the same rates across their region, and so they have, you know, there's a certain amount they can put into it, but in this case it was too far away from their existing gas lines, and so we were able to actually fund that, and it was a real neat, clean project, and allowed folks to convert from propane or electric to, and over there it's Utah, or I can't remember, Rocky Mountain Power, I think, and it's much higher rates than Idaho Power. And so, but it was able to, again, enable them to convert, which will save their residents a lot of money, which was also kind of unique. Again, that's the first one that we had done.
There's another question that just came in. It's how does USDA Rural Development work with your housing programs? Is there help with housing?
Yes, we do have basically 3 different housing programs. We have our single-family direct program, the 502 direct. That's for low and very low income folks. The USDA has like 14 different definitions of rural. So where WEP is 10,000, community facility is 20,000. Our housing programs, it's now 35,000, and then our business programs is 50,000. So yeah, on the population it depends. We also have a 502 guaranteed program where a bank makes a loan and we issue a guarantee on it or an insurance policy. We do have a 504 loan and grant program for existing very low-income homeowners, and it's a 1% program to do essential repairs. The grant program is limited to correcting health or safety issues, plus the homeowner has to be 62 years of age or older, and they can't afford a loan. And so often we'll do some accessibility stuff or fix a furnace, or on some of our water or sewer projects, often they'll, like if there's a supply line that needs replaced, they can do that as part of that project. We also have a multifamily program where, and we have, I used to know that we have, I believe it's around 1,400 apartment units around the state that are through that program. We also have a guaranteed program on that partners with some of with IHFA on and their tax credit program and so on to build some new projects. And then we have some farm labor housing projects that are funded through that program as well. There's not a lot of new money in the multifamily, so most of the money is in the single family housing program.
What about, I think, this would interest the group, this is just a question for me. Could you briefly talk about your business, some of your business programs?
Sure. We have our business programs, our Rural Business Service. Their bread and butter program is the Business and Industry Guaranteed Program. One close to Boise here, for example, that is the Bogus Basin. They actually have guaranteed some loans to put in, to refinance and to do the Superior Chairlift.
I've taken
was one. The new one's a lot better than the old one. But they do businesses, everything from lumber mills to gravel pits to, or convenience stores to any. You can't do that for production agriculture, but they do processing. They also have some grant programs, the value-added program, and then they have the used to be called the Rural Business Enterprise Grant, but it's the RDBG program. I will say it needs to buy a vowel. But that one is one where often it'll partner, or it's a small program, but can be used if it has to go to a city, but it can be used for economic development or a small job creation. Then they can use that for feasibility studies, things like that. And that program, and it is grant, but they usually get a couple, $200,000 to $300,000 a year, and they try to do a lot of smaller grants so that the funds are spread around. They also have some energy efficiency programs that came into effect with the 2008 Farm Bill, and they do have, again, some of those. All of those programs are referenced on our website, and so again, if you have any questions on that, please feel free to let us know.
I guess in closing, two resources I use all the time for USDA Rural Development is their program summary, which is on their website, and I just printed it off, and it seems like they have a program for everything, so when I get calls, I reference that. And then also they have a state and regional contact list, and that's worth printing off too. So you have everybody's contact information, and it's a handy reference. Like I said, they can do a lot. They just touched on a couple programs today. USDA Rural Development, they have many programs for many different needs throughout the state. So I guess with that, we'll conclude our webinar unless there's any other questions. All right. Thanks, everyone.